Do you ever want to dive deeper into the Bible, but you just don't know where to begin or struggle to feel like you even have the time? When you read the Bible, do you get frustrated because you know there's got to be so much more in there, you just have no clue how to get it out? Or maybe you just want to know the Bible better and you are looking for any resource to help. Well, then this is the podcast for you. Welcome to the Context and Color of the Bible podcast. We are two sisters. I'm Erica.
I'm Veronica.
We love to study the Bible and we love to help others understand it better. When it comes to our own study of Scripture, we have found that in bringing back the context of Scripture, it actually adds to our understanding. It adds color to the black and white pages of the text. Veronica.
Erica.
So I really owe you because I am sitting here so sore right now. I don't know if you could tell when I got up from the table, but I groaned and barely moved. Yes. In the last few weeks, Veronica has found workouts.
Yes.
Specifically designed for women over the age of 35.
Yes, which must mean we're both over 35.
We are both over 35. And so we've been doing them and they...
Not together.
No, separately. But they're working muscles in ways I haven't worked before.
Yes.
Or at least not pushed in this long of a time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's hard.
It's very hard. And it's light weights, which is driving me
right.
crazy. Chase laughs. He goes, "What are you doing, Mom? 5-pound weights?"
Right. You know what? Just
Am I
pushing
making
my
ugly
arms
faces?
together hurt.
Yes, I did that today.
Yes. So we are experiencing new workouts, stretching our muscles.
Yep.
But it feels good.
It does. It's actually exciting. Erica texts me. She's
Right.
like, "I hurt." I'm like, "Don't you love it?"
Right.
I love being
I'm
the
getting
burn.
stronger and I'm pushing myself and I'm growing.
Mm-hmm.
Veronica.
I'm so interested to see where you're going.
I know. She's like,
me, I've got a
how
great
are
opener."
we doing this? That's what we're doing, especially right now in the context of color.
Context and color?
Context and color. We are stretching our muscles
Yes.
and our listeners' muscles
Yes.
through this next series.
Yes. Which they actually don't know what it is
No.
unless they follow us, unless they get our newsletter.
Oh, yeah, because your newsletter tells
Yep.
what we're about to do. Because we understand that starting something when you're not used to, your mental muscle is just like your physical muscle.
Yeah, that's so true.
And when you're not used to thinking in a certain way or seeing something in a certain way, it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
It stretches you and it takes time and effort, but it is so worth it.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes you put it down and you come back, pick it up again.
And that's okay. Or maybe you go really slow,
Yep.
or you go through it really fast and then you come back and you go slow.
Yep.
We are going to stretch some mental muscles.
Yes, because I've been stretching my mental muscles
Right.
for a couple months now.
On this book.
My friend Laura has been stretching her mental muscles.
Right.
Because she's been the sounding board. She and Erica are my sounding board. And Laura, it's like, we Marco Polo. And she's just sometimes, we actually haven't Marco Polo in a couple of days because she's like, "I've got to go back and take notes and think about what you said to me."
Right. It takes effort.
It does.
But it's worth it.
It is worth it because what we're trying to do, what I love is what we've done with Genesis and Exodus is we've taken it, and you go, "Oh, it fits."
Yes.
It fits into the storyline. I see how it fits into the rest of the Bible.
Yes.
And I love that Genesis is foundations, faith, and family.
Yep.
Abraham's faith and family. Exodus was God redeems, God covenant, and God dwells. All based on memory.
Yep.
Which I told Erica, we kind of set ourselves up then
Right.
to do Leviticus.
For this book. Don't turn us off.
I know. Oh my
Don't turn
word.
us off.
I'm so excited. I actually
Right.
dreamed 2 nights ago about what I'm going to say today.
Oh, my word.
I know. I was talking to people in my dream explaining Exodus, and it's like, wait, I jumped ahead. I didn't want to start with that. Why?
Right.
So this has become all-consuming.
This book of Leviticus.
This book of Leviticus, and oh my word, I am in love with this book. And not in a way, Laura and I have talked about this. She's like, "I love that you're going to bring color to Leviticus." I'm like, okay, don't think bright colors.
They're
Don't think
muted.
bold. It's
Right.
It's more like Leviticus brings that black outline. But I'm not going to get into that outline and all that until we start diving into the chapters. For right now, I want to set up the structure of the entire book.
So we're going to look at the overview
Yes.
of the book of Leviticus, how to read it.
Yes.
And then we'll dive in
Yep. So in saying that, Erica's saying overview of Leviticus, you need to right now pause this podcast.
Yes.
Go to www.thecontextandcolorofthebible.com and download, look at our overview I'm going to provide so you can walk through this seeing what I'm describing.
If you can't.
I know. I'm going to try to describe it.
If you can't, for some reason, like get a piece of paper and a pencil because it will help so much. And you kind of want to...
You draw three... rectangles or squares. The bottom one is going to be the base. Make that the biggest.
Yep.
And then a smaller one on top, and then a smaller one on top of that.
Yes.
So 3 rectangles stacked on top of each other.
Yep.
And at the bottom, that bottom big rectangle, I'm going to talk about it as a clock, though.
Right.
Just so we know. So the very bottom would be 6 o'clock. The top would be 12 o'clock.
Right.
Directly across from it. Because what I'm going to show you, and I'm totally stealing this from Mary Douglas's book, Leviticus is Literature.
Right.
But she came up with a foundational, extremely mind-blowing way of describing Leviticus and helping you see the structure of it.
Right.
Because what she says is Leviticus is written as a ring structure or ring composition. Which doesn't make sense right off the bat, but let me explain it. Narrative writing has a plot that indicates the progress toward the anticipated ending. We're used to that. The story starts, you have conflict, and you have resolution. You know it's going to an end.
Right. And so when it ends, the story's done.
Right. Leviticus doesn't have that. Leviticus... ring composition is different. And the best example that she gave that I can give you is your yearly seasonal cycle. Spring, summer, fall, winter.
Right.
Once winter comes, it's not done. You start over again, spring, summer, fall, winter.
Right.
And it continues to go around. So when you come to the end, you've actually returned to the beginning.
Which I did not understand completely what you meant, Veronica, the first time you told me that until you took me through the structure.
Okay.
And showed it to me. So hang in there because then it made sense and I went, oh, you're right. I see it. So if you can't download it for some reason, get that pen and paper.
Yep.
And do your best to write notes.
Yep.
And stick with us.
Yep. So what I'm going to do is we're going to start at the entrance to the courtyard, which would be that bottom rectangle.
So the 6 on a clock.
The 6 o'clock position.
Right.
At the bottom rectangle.
Right, a 1.
Yes. Is actually Leviticus 1:1. And Erica, do you want to read that?
The Lord called to Moses and spoke to him from the tent of meeting. He said.
All right. And so what we're going to do at that 6 o'clock position is chapter 1. Then you're going to go to 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock.
Right.
And that's going to be chapters 2 through 7.
So we're working our way backwards around the clock.
Counterclockwise.
Right.
Starting at the 6, going
right.
up. Which are the sacrifices. And actually, if you think about it, the courtyard is actually where this takes place.
These sacrifices. Yes.
And then at the 12 o'clock position would be the entrance to the actual tabernacle.
Right.
Which is your medium-sized box.
Right.
And as you get going, that entrance is going to be chapters 8, 9, and 10 of Leviticus.
Right.
Because when you think about it, it makes sense because those chapters
right.
have to deal with the consecration of the priests.
Right.
And then the death of Aaron's 2 sons.
And the priests work in the tabernacle.
Right.
And there's a serious step up in the holiness factor when you move from
the courtyard
into the tabernacle. So you feel that weight.
Right.
There's been a death.
And you're going to see how these priests have been set apart. Right. Everything they go to say, hey, you get to cross that barrier from the courtyard into the actual tabernacle.
Right.
Now, let's move to the 11 o'clock position.
So we're still working in that
big first box.
Right.
The 11 o'clock position.
Right.
And 11 all the way back down to the 6 o'clock position are going to be chapters 12 through 17. Okay. So basically, you're going to start at the bottom of the box, and you're going to go counterclockwise, and you're going to number 1 through 8, 8 and 10 at the very top.
Right.
And then 11 through 17. And 17 matches up with chapter 1.
So it takes you back to chapter
1. Because what you see is chapters 1 through 7 and 11 through 17 are complementary in theme. And they should be read together.
1 through 7 and 11 through 17.
Yes.
Okay.
Because 1 through 7 is how people bring gifts to the altar
Right.
and how sin and defilement need atonement. And we'll get into sacrifices and we'll talk all about this more
We'll
in
go
depth.
more in depth. She'll hit on these. We're just giving you the overview.
Yep. Then chapters 11 through 15 are examples of defilement.
Okay.
Here are things that defile you.
That make me need those
that
sacrifices.
make me need those sacrifices.
Okay.
And then chapter 16 is all the reminder. It's all about the Day of Atonement.
Right.
Even with these sacrifices, life is still constantly
Happening.
happening. Yes. Contamination
Right. Just
of
occurs.
a fallen world
Right.
continually, yearly needs to be atoned for.
Right.
And then chapter 17 completes the ring.
Okay.
So, Erica, if you want to read, what did you open to? Chapter 1 or chapter 17?
I've got both. I can do either one.
How about you do 17?
All right. 17 verses.
3 and 4. But I'm going to read chapter 1, verses 2 and 3. Speak to the Israelites and say to them, when you bring an offering to the Lord, bring as your offering an animal from either the herd or the flock. If the offering is a burnt offering from the herd, he is to offer a male without defect. He must present it at the entrance to the tent of meeting so that it will be acceptable to the Lord.
So this is chapter 17, verses 3 and 4. Any Israelite who sacrifices an ox, a lamb, or a goat in the camp or outside of it, instead of bringing it to the entrance of the tent of meeting to present it as an offering to the Lord in front of the tabernacle of the Lord, that man shall be considered guilty of bloodshed. He has shed blood and must be cut off from his people.
Because ultimately what they're saying is this is not just sacrificing animals to eat. This is sacrificing, chapter 17 is sacrificing an animal to worship the Lord. You must do it at this location.
And the tent of meeting is another way to describe the tabernacle.
Correct. And ultimately you're doing it at this location because the blood belongs to the Lord. The life is in the blood and all lives belong to God.
Okay.
Man or beast. They all belong to God. So he has the right to say, when you're going to sacrifice to me and you're going to take that life, you're going to do it where I tell you to do it.
Right.
So that's the first ring.
So 17 and 1 match back up together to remind you of that.
Of what you're doing, why you're coming into this.
Right.
And here, this is essentially that big box
Right.
is the courtyard.
Right. Okay.
Where the basin and the altar are, and we'll get into that later.
Right.
Now, let's go back to that curtain. We had chapters 8, 9, and 10.
At the 12
At
position.
the 12 o'clock position. Inside the big box, you have 8, 9, and 10 inside the big box.
Right.
Right above it, inside the medium-sized box, you then have chapters 18, 19, and 20. So essentially, this is moving into the holy place.
Right.
And 18, 19, and 20, these chapters are about justice and how to live justly and rightly as God's people. These, which is the center of a way of this religion, according to Mary Douglas, but according to everything we do, we are to live rightly.
Right.
Because we're in covenant with God.
Right.
And 18, 19, and 20, we'll get into it later, help you see how to do that. And they're also then in the center of the tabernacle. You've crossed that screen and started to walk into God's presence more.
Because now you're in the holy place.
Right.
You're in the tabernacle.
Right. And as you look throughout the scripture, you will see God is the judge who will do right.
Right.
He makes justice the line and righteousness the plumb line. So here's how to live,
Right.
act rightly.
Right.
So now you're going to take a step away from that screen and you're in the middle of that medium box.
Okay. So we're going straight up.
Straight up. You're in the middle of the sanctuary of the holy place. And this is now chapters 21 and 22.
Okay.
And chapters 21 and 22 are all about the priesthood.
Because this is where the priests do a lot of their duty.
This is where they're working. This is why they've been chosen, so they can come into this room
Right.
and do this. Then take another step up, and you get chapters 23 to 24, verse 9. And as you look at chapter 23 and 24 to verse 9, it's about the feasts.
The 7 biblical
and
feasts.
then the oil and the bread, because that's also in that location. But the 7 yearly feasts, these are the offerings, the sacrifices commanded and ordained by God to come into his presence.
Right.
And this is the ones for sure the priests will be working.
Right.
So it's in this grouping because, hey, priests, these are the times you will for sure be needed, be working. But chapters 1 through 7, that's more voluntary.
Right.
That's more the people coming at their own schedule, routine.
Right.
But then just in case you don't come, God says, hey, chapter 23, you are going to come for these.
Right.
And the priests, you need to know what's going to happen and be expected of you.
Because during the 7 feasts for each one, they had sacrifices.
Yes.
That they had to fulfill.
Correct. So now you're standing right in front of the screen, the top of that box, that medium box, that separates the holy place from the most holy place.
Right.
And right there you have chapter 24, verses 10 through 22.
24:10 through
22.
So only chapter 24 is right
because
there.
Because this is here we get a couple little stories. You get a story about Aaron's 2 sons and how they died.
Right.
And now we get another story. You get a story of a blasphemer.
Right.
And he's stoned.
Right.
And the idea is you're about to walk into the Holy of Holies, into God's presence.
Right.
You don't do that casually. You don't do that lightly. Because even using his name wrong brought about death.
You can appreciate why during the time of Jesus they didn't say God's name.
Right?
I can appreciate.
So both of these
weight.
stories have death, have somebody dying, doing something wrong. But if you look at it's a next level up into God's presence.
Right.
So if you're coming into God's presence, you don't come in any old way.
Lightly or unprepared.
Right. Because if you do, here's what happens.
You die.
Yes.
This is serious.
So, right there at the screen between the two is this story, chapter 24, verses 10 through 22. Now you walk into the Holy of Holies.
Okay, so you're in that top rectangle, the tiny
box,
one.
Because this is the smallest part.
Right.
And it's God's abode on earth. And so this is now chapters 25, 26, and 27.
That's what you would write in that little.
Yes.
Okay.
Because if you look at these chapters, 25 is about a Sabbath year.
Right.
The year of Jubilee. Hey, just a reminder, it's all God's.
Right.
Chapter 25, the land is all God's. In fact, to the point, God's the one that got to pick which tribe got which piece of land. How much land they got.
Yeah.
And God said, oh, yeah, and by the way, in case something happens and you have to shift land around, you might trade, you might lose it, you got to give it back to who I gave it to in the first place. Because ultimately it's mine and I gave it to them and you can't take it from them. And then 26 is all about, if you look for repetition, 26 is all about, I will do this, you will do that. When you listen to me, or when you disobey me, here's what I'm going to do.
Right.
So 26 is all about, here's God saying, here's what I want you to do. The good blessings and the curses, depending on what you choose to do.
Because now we are in God's presence.
Yes, you're in God's presence. He gets to tell you
how to live.
You made it in this far. You're going to do exactly what he says.
Right.
And then 27 is all about if you want to, what does it say?
Redeem.
If a man dedicates to the Lord, look for that repetition. 27 is all about if you want to give something to God, whether it's your land or a part of your house or an animal, here's how you do it. Because again, it all belongs to God. So when you're giving it back to him, when you're giving him a portion of it,
how do I do that?
And then if you look at the end of 27, verse 34.
Right. You want me to read that?
Yes, please.
These are the commands the Lord gave Moses on Mount Sinai for the Israelites.
And if you go back to the very beginning, Leviticus 1, as I'm turning there.
The Lord called to Moses and spoke to him from the tent of meeting. He said, basically, it takes us right back.
It takes you right back. It's not a story that ends. You come to the end and you're right back at the beginning. You could, in essence, take that ending and start right back over and go through all those chapters again.
And maybe we're supposed to.
Right. But that's ring composition.
Right.
That's how Leviticus is laid out in 3 boxes.
Right.
Correlating to the courtyard, the holy place, and the Holy of Holies.
Right.
And all of them continue to ring back and come back to where you started. So one of the things as you're reading, look for repetition.
Mm-hmm.
The Lord said, the Lord spoke. What else did I see? Oh, Mount Sinai. Pay attention to how much Mount Sinai gets repeated and where it gets repeated, and ask yourself, okay, as I'm coming back to complete, especially that 1 through 17 ring, see what connections you can make between chapter 1 and chapter 17.
Oh,
because you will see repeated words closing that ring.
Can you do that between all of them, like 2 and 16?
Mostly 1 through 17.
Okay, because it's the end of that ring. Okay,
right.
Gotcha.
But 1 to 27 then is the giant ring that says, hey, start again.
Right.
So, I don't know. To me, to look at Leviticus this way.
Right.
And go, okay, hopefully that gets you excited. I really, really do feel like Leviticus is foundational to the rest of Scripture. Because if you don't understand if you don't truly get Leviticus, you're missing out in the prophets. And you don't understand completely what's going on in the Gospels then.
Right. Well, I think you need to break down that with the prophets a little bit more, because we've talked about this, so I know exactly what you mean.
Because the prophets keep coming back to your sacrifices and your feasts and what you're doing, why the tabernacle's gone, why the temple's gone.
You're not doing what God set up in Leviticus.
Right.
So until you understand the heart and what Leviticus says, when the prophets come along and say, you're not doing it right.
Right. And we'll get into that more because I've got an amazing illustration.
You're not, okay.
I'm not going to go there yet.
Never mind. Keep waiting.
No.
She's got some great.
Because truthfully, at the end, we're going to go through all of Leviticus. And then at the end, I'm going to make those connections to the prophets.
Oh, okay.
And the Gospels and the book of Hebrews.
That's a hook to keep you listening all the way to the end. Just so you wonder.
Yes. This is all written out. I know exactly where we're going. And so, but to me, I just go, Leviticus truthfully, it's not a book filled with, I can't wait to read some more.
I'm glad you said that, because I think our readers need to understand, our listeners.
Yes.
It's okay to not be excited, like, yay!
Right. It's not exciting in that sense of, I want to read the next chapter, what's happening. It's not a story.
Not a narrative. Yeah.
It's not a narrative. It's not even books. It's not even going to be the book you go to. Let me find comfort. Let me find what I need to soothe my hurting soul today.
Right.
It's not Leviticus.
Right.
And
that's
not
okay.
going to be. It's not supposed to be.
Right.
Leviticus is meant to, we'll get into that next week.
Okay.
But Leviticus is here. It is the outline. It is that black line that's going to bring color and highlight everything else in the rest of the Bible. That's what Leviticus, I think, is supposed to do. It's supposed to be the edge that defines everything, but it doesn't bring the color. It doesn't bring the excitement.
But it helps you understand it so the color can be brought.
Yes.
Is it the outline around the color?
It is. It's the outline around the color.
Is that too much of an analogy? I don't know.
But to me, Leviticus, you're never going to sit here and go, I've got the perfect verse to help my hurting friend. It's in Leviticus. It's not.
And it's okay to say that.
Yes.
But there's still a lot to this book.
There's so much more. So next week, we're going to come back. I'm going to lay out Leviticus. We're going to get into Leviticus is the book about separations and holiness.
Right.
But for now, we wanted you to have, here's the outline. Here's the structure of it.
Right.
Next week, we'll talk about holiness, purity, common, uncommon, and then we'll get into sacrifices, and then we'll start going chapter by chapter.
All righty.
How does that sound?
Sounds good.
All right. And don't forget, go to www.thecontextandcolorofthebible.com. What you're going to do is you're going to go to podcasts, then scroll down till you find the white tab that says Leviticus. Click on Leviticus, And that will take you to all of the podcasts for Leviticus as they come out and the handouts
that you need.
that you're going to need. That's where, or sign up for our newsletter and I'll email it to you before the podcast. Oh, no, I guess the podcast comes out first, then the newsletter.
Oh, yeah, it comes out on Monday.
Yes.
Yes.
You can sign up for our newsletter on our website, but those of you who sign up will get the handout.
You get some help.
directly sent to you.
Always a plus.
Yes. So,
All right.
thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you next week.
Bye-bye.